Miss Tucker, you believed another man was your dad until a bomb was dropped on you 10 years ago when your mother admitted that the defendant is your biological father.
They say the truth always comes out, but sometimes it shows up 3 decades late, carrying more damage than answers. This case was about broken trust, buried secrets, and a young woman caught in the middle of 2 people who'd been denying, hiding, and running from the truth her entire life. Adriana Tucker walked into that courtroom hoping to close a chapter, but what happened exposed more wounds than she ever expected.
A few years, I have been trying to get Charles to do a DNA test with me. Twice, I scheduled a test, he didn't show up, and it's just a lot of confusion in my own mind, and it's very traumatic to me. I'm trying to figure out if he's my father or not to close this chapter in my life.
Adriana grew up believing she knew who her father was, a man who never showed up but whose family welcomed her like one of their own. Every weekend, they'd pick her up, pour love on her, and tell her she belonged. But a phone call shattered everything when she was just in the 5th grade. On the other end of the line, the man she thought was her father coldly told her she wasn't his. No explanations, no kindness.
I grew up thinking someone else was my father. So to find out that someone else could be my father, it really had an effect on me.
Charles, however, wasn't interested in that possibility. He stood firm in his doubt, his words sharp, his stance unmoved. He claimed he'd been told 30 years ago that he wasn't Adriana's father, and he believed it. When Adriana's mother told him she was pregnant, she insisted the baby wasn't his. He said he walked away then, cutting ties, building a new life, refusing to look back.
I want her to find out who her father really is also.
You don't believe you are?
Well, I had doubts because her mother told me that I wasn't 30 years ago, so.
And so, Mom, Miss Tucker?
Yes, Your Honor.
You hear your daughter speak?
Yes, Your Honor.
Express her pain?
Yes, Your Honor.
You say you and Mr. Hunter have always known that he was her biological father?
Yes, Your Honor.
Her mother, Adriana Tucker, confessed she'd lied, but said she only did it to protect her. She'd told her daughter another man was the father because, in her words, Charles Hunter, the man now standing across from them in court, wasn't fit to be a role model. But was it really about protection? Or was it about avoiding the truth and consequences of a tangled relationship that neither parent wanted to face?
I was dating this guy, but it was basically over. And at the end of the day, he wasn't good for her, and neither was Mr. Hunter. So I just went on and just raised her by myself, well, my family.
For years, she believed one story. Her father was absent, indifferent, a ghost in her life. Then, at 18, she finally spoke with him, and with a few careless words, he ripped her world apart. Now, decades later, they're facing off in court, and the truth is, moments away from exploding into the open. The daughter, now a woman, fought to keep her composure as she recounted that first devastating conversation.
My very first time talking to him, you know, hearing that, it was confusing, yeah.
I understand. And so I see you fighting back tears, honey. I know you've had to hold so much of this in. What do you do after that?
His sister didn't come get me again after that, but I did go home and I talked to my mom about it.
For Adriana, the damage was already done. She stood in front of them, no longer a little girl, but a grown woman, scarred by years of confusion, rejection, and unanswered questions. She didn't deny her mother's faults. She knew her mother had lied, but she also believed Charles shared the blame. She argued he knew he'd been with her mother, knew there was a possibility, and never tried to find the truth.
Mom was wrong. I still feel as though Mr. Hunter also knew a big chance that he was my father. My mom is wrong, but he's wrong because I was born innocent into this. And even if she told him he wasn't the father, he knew he laid down with her.
The courtroom tension grew thicker when Adriana explained how she first heard Hunter's name, not from her mother, not from her family, but from a stranger at the corner store. This woman, without hesitation, told her she looked just like her real father. That father wasn't the man Adriana had grown up believing in. It was Charles Hunter, a name that meant nothing to her until that moment.
I was in the 7th grade, and where we're from is very small. So I was at a store, and there's a woman who knows them both, and she told me, she said, "You look just like your dad." And so naturally, I'm thinking she's talking about the other gentleman. So I go, "Oh, you know my dad?" And I said his name, and she goes, "That's not your dad."
But here's where the story twisted even harder. Mr. Hunter swore he left town because Adriana's mother told him the baby wasn't his. He said he had no reason to doubt her back then, so he disappeared. 15, 16 years gone without looking back. And when he returned, he only heard rumors that maybe the daughter he'd walked away from was his. By then, too much time had passed.
So when she got pregnant, you were told?
Yeah, and she told me the child wasn't mine.
And what was your relationship like with Miss Tucker? You were dating exclusively? You were boyfriend and girlfriend, or just?
Yeah, for a short while.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a legal battle unfolding in that courtroom. It was 3 decades of missed chances, miscommunication, and avoidance crashing together. Adriana's mother admitted to lying. Hunter claimed he believed the lie and built his life around it. And Adriana? She was the collateral damage, a child left in the wreckage of 2 adults' choices. As the judge prepared to reveal the result, the room fell silent.
Mr. Hunter, you are not the father. I'm sorry, Adriana.
It's okay. I just want an answer so that I don't have to keep interrupting his life or, keep going through this in my own life.
Ms. Robinson, you're here desperately trying to save your relationship. You've petitioned the court for a DNA test to prove to the defendant, Mr. Parker, that he is the father of your 23-month-old daughter, Tanila.
Yes, Your Honor.
Before he walked into the courtroom, his mind was already made up. This wasn't his child. He had no doubts, no second guessing. Miss Robinson could cry all she wanted, but nothing would change his conviction. He had a wedding on hold, a future to plan, and a name to protect. A paternity test would put everything to rest finally. But here's the thing about certainty. It only takes one undeniable truth to shatter it completely.
So, Mr. Parker, today's result pretty much determined everything.
Yes, Your Honor, it does.
Explain.
Tanila really means the world to me. She's my everything. She's the reason why I get up every morning to go work and go do something in my life.
Miss Robinson, on the other hand, was fighting for her life. She wasn't just here to prove a biological connection. She was trying to salvage the only relationship that ever made sense to her. She had stayed silent for too long, kept too many secrets, and now it had all caught up with her. Mr. Parker wanted the truth. Fine, he'd get the truth. But was he ready for it? That was the real question.
But I refuse to continue this relationship if they're just lies.
So has there been a lot of lies, Ms. Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor, it have been a lot of lies. He didn't know around the time that I have pregnant that I was seeing someone else. That's where the possibility come from that Tanila might not be his.
Mr. Parker's suspicions weren't baseless. He had watched Miss Robinson slip away, piece by piece, long before she admitted to anything. Late-night disappearances, calls that went unanswered. And then there was the moment in the park. He had seen her with another man, holding hands, acting like a couple. When he confronted her, she brushed it off. But the damage was done. The trust was gone.
We had met October of 2012. It was a great time. We loved each other, watching Netflix. We was doing everything together. We chilled, do what we do best, But then, she started to be more distant herself and, the calls started not coming in. She didn't start showing up.
Towards you.
Yes, you were.
I was spending multiple times with you.
someone else.
Months later, out of nowhere, she showed up with a baby in her arms, calling him Daddy. For 5 months, he hadn't known. Not a single word, no phone call, no message, nothing. Miss Robinson had carried a child, given birth, and raised her for almost half a year before deciding to tell him. And now, she expected him to accept it just like that, as if time hadn't passed?
Then all of a sudden, things started to come back around. She came to my house. I asked her, I was so shocked at her. I was like, hey, how you doing today? I seen a long time ago. And all of a sudden, it was a baby there. So I'm like, who's this baby of yours? And she was like, this your child. And I said, what, my child? What do you mean, my child?
But Miss Robinson had her reasons. Reasons she couldn't quite put into words without making herself look worse. The truth was, she had been scared, terrified, of rejection, of responsibility. What would happen if she told Mr. Parker that she wasn't sure, that another man had been in the picture, that maybe, just maybe, this child wasn't his? So she chose the easy way out. She told the other man first.
If you would have told me that you was pregnant and everything, I would have been down there for damn with you since day one. And I would.
Okay.
Why didn't you tell Mr. Parker? I don't understand.
I was nervous, Your Honor. I was going through my pregnancy hormones, and I was just distraught. I was going through a lot. I was nervous. I didn't know how to go about coming to him with the bad news.
What bad news?
That I was sleeping around with someone else.
That part, though, that part stung the most, the birth certificate. He hadn't just been kept in the dark, he had been erased. Another man had held his child first, signed his name, and taken his place. And now, that man was gone. And Miss Robinson had come crawling back, asking him to step in. Was he supposed to just forget everything? To pretend that betrayal didn't cut deep?
That Mr. Parker could also be the father?
No, Your Honor.
Did you tell the other guy that he was the father?
Yes, Your Honor.
You did? Oh, you told the other guy from the park holding hands, you're the father.
Yes, Your Honor.
And now, here they were, standing before a judge, waiting for a piece of paper to determine everything. Miss Robinson was pleading with her eyes, hoping he would understand and see his love for the child as proof enough. But Mr. Parker wasn't interested in feelings, and as much as he had grown attached, as much as he had come to love little Tenila, there was still a chance, a real chance, that she wasn't his.
In that moment, when it was time for the birth certificate to be signed, you knew that there was more than one potential father, right?
Yes, Your
And
Honor.
it's crazy. That's supposed to be my child. If that is my child, how did this man sit here and just sign the birth certificate? And that just really hurts me right now, Your Honor.
Miss Robinson's sister had her own thoughts. She had been blindsided too. She had asked, straight up, if there were other possible fathers, and Miss Robinson had sworn there weren't. Now, standing here, hearing the truth, she felt like a fool. But no matter what, she was standing by her sister. That baby was family, no matter what the results said. But for Mr. Parker, this was about more than just love.
So, I want to hear from your witness. Ma'am, would you please stand? Will you stand, ma'am? I'd like to hear from you.
Yes. So ready to stand. It was itchy.
Ms. Robinson, you are...
I'm her sister.
What do you know about this?
I talk to her a lot on the phone. I hear her crying a lot. I moved down here from Chicago to help her out. I keep the baby for weeks at a time. I provide financially for the baby. She wants to go to school. I must say, financially wise, he's good. He's excellent with them too.
The courtroom fell silent as Jerome handed the envelope to the judge. Mr. Parker barely breathed. Miss Robinson's hands trembled with anticipation. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. The judge opened the envelope. For a split second, time stood still. And then, finally, the words that changed everything.
Mr. Parker, you are not Tenila's father.
Oh my God. Woo!
I'm sorry.
Sis.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Cherpez, you claim you and your grandmother have been given no choice but to drag the defendant into court today because you say he moved away and abandoned your 9-month-old daughter, Araya. You believe the DNA results will prove that he is her biological father, and you demand he stops running from his responsibilities. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
9 months old. That's how long Aria has been on this earth. Long enough for her mother, Ms. Cherpes, to learn one hard truth. When a man doesn't want to take responsibility, he'll find a million reasons to run. She didn't expect to end up in court, begging for what should have been freely given. But here she was, dragging Mr. McQueen into the light, forcing him to face the truth. Today, the DNA test would settle everything.
So she's 8 months old, 9 months old, pretty much nothing?
Yep.
And I can see that that really hurts you. You're very angry about that?
Yes.
Tell the court.
It's hard because, I don't know, I didn't ever see it like this.
How did you see it?
Like he had promised.
And how was that?
Definitely not like this. I had moved out to go live with him.
McQueen, however, wasn't breaking a sweat. He wasn't here to claim a child. He was here to clear his name. In his mind, the math didn't add up. According to him, while he was breaking his back working 12-hour shifts, Ms. Cherpes was busy entertaining other men. He was confident today's test would prove Aria wasn't his. Confidence is a dangerous thing when the truth is still unknown.
So you don't believe Araya is your biological child, and you're saying you still stepped up anyway, to the best of your ability?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is your position right now? You have doubts.
Yes.
Explain to the court.
I have doubts because I didn't have her full attention.
Ms. Cherpes had her own accusations. The truth, she argued, was that he had been unfaithful. She had left home for what he thought was a 4-day visit to her father's, but in reality, she had only been gone for a few hours. When she returned, she found exactly what she feared: a woman inside her home, McQueen, standing in front of the door as if to block her from entering.
And so you caught him cheating on you?
Yep.
And how did this lead to the paternity question? I mean, if you say you were faithful, he cheated on you, that still has nothing to do with Araya's paternity.
It's because he doesn't trust himself, so he thought it was all right, so he assumes I thought it was okay to be cheating on him.
He had smirked at her, as had the other woman, as if the whole thing was some kind of twisted joke. She had a 3-year-old daughter with her that night, and for her child's sake, she swallowed the rage burning inside her. Instead of a fight, she threw him out the next day, taking his name off the lease. Ms. Cherpes wasn't just hurt, she was furious. She had moved in with him, trusted him, and they had planned for this baby.
I had my 3-year-old daughter with me too, so I didn't want confrontation in front of her, and I ended up kicking him out and took him off my lease the next day.
Do you believe at the end of the day, he thinks you're cheating because he's the one cheating?
Yes.
McQueen fired back. He wasn't the villain here, at least, not in his version of events. He hadn't abandoned anyone. If anything, he had tried. But how could he stay when he wasn't even sure the baby was his? He had seen too much. Late-night phone calls, messages from other men, and spending the night in another man's house. What kind of committed girlfriend acts like that?
I actually found out that she went to another man's house and spent the night.
Is that true, Miss Cherpez?
Yes.
So you did? You went to another man's house and spent the night?
Yeah, because he had brought a woman to our house. So I kind of avoid the fighting I had left, yes.
The courtroom's energy shifted again. The accusations weren't one-sided anymore. And now, here they were, 2 people drowning in their own betrayals, with a baby caught in the middle. It was no longer just about paternity. It was about trust, or rather, the complete absence of it. 2 people who had once planned a future together were tearing each other apart before a judge.
I'm mad, Mr. McQueen, because the responsibility is falling on me and my husband, and it should be his responsibility for the baby, not ours.
How is the responsibility falling on you?
Because they're staying with us. I'm the one who cares for the baby when mommy can't. She's been doing really good.
McQueen wasn't moved. He needed proof, concrete, irrefutable proof. No more, he said, she said, no more gut feelings, just science. It wasn't just about area, it was about trust and knowing that he wasn't being made a fool of. He had been faithful in the beginning and had believed in their future, but everything fell apart. He wanted to know the truth before committing to a life he wasn't sure belonged to him.
She was talking to men or she was sleeping with men?
I don't know. I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
It's all in his head, all of it.
You say you planned this baby, you were excited for this baby. 2 weeks later, you were making babies with somebody else. What is going on?
That I didn't have her attention no more.
Ms. Cherpes shook her head. There were no other men, at least not in the way he wanted to believe. Yes, she had left that night after he brought another woman into their home, but she hadn't been unfaithful to him before that. She hadn't lied about Aria's paternity. He was twisting everything, making it seem like she was the unfaithful one when, in reality, he had been the one stepping out.
I have guy friends. I'm allowed to have friends.
So you have guy friends?
Yeah.
None of whom you've been intimate with?
Nope.
A week after I left my house, she moved her ex-boyfriend in, the one she was getting money with before. A week after that, I heard she was sleeping with another man, and then 3 weeks after that, she chose another one.
The courtroom fell silent as the judge reached for the envelope. It had all come down to this moment, to a simple piece of paper that held the answer. This was it, the moment of truth. If the results confirmed his doubts, he would walk away guilt-free. But if they didn't, if he had spent all this time running from his own blood, then there would be no excuses left.
It has been determined by this court. The biological father is Mr. McQueen.
See?
Ms. Lide, you say that for 26 years you have known only one man, the defendant, Mr. Ellis, to be your biological father. And you're devastated that he is claiming you're not his.
Yes, Your Honor.
For 26 years, she believed only one man could be her father. It was a simple truth, one she never questioned, until now. Standing in court, Danielle Lide watches as the man she has always known as Dad stood across from her, shaking his head. Lewis isn't just denying responsibility. He's here to prove with absolute certainty that he is not her father.
Growing up, it was just me and my mom. I've been in and out of group homes, foster homes, no male role model in my life. It's been hard. I had a long, hard life growing up.
When you hear her talk about her life without you,
Louis was unmoved by her pain. He was here for one reason: to refute any claim that he was Danielle's father. He painted a picture of a past filled with betrayal. He and Danielle's mother had been together for 7 years. Still, she had been unfaithful, disappearing for days, sometimes weeks, at a time. His words cut deep, but Danielle didn't flinch. She had heard them before.
I feel for her and all, but I'm not her father. I mean, her mother, she disappears weeks at a time, out there partying. I mean, look bright as she is. I mean, I ain't no doctor or nothing, but I'm pretty sure two people this color ain't gonna make no baby this bright-skinned. I mean, she was practically white.
I don't feel like that's correct because my son, it was white.
But there was more to the story. Louis had taken a DNA test years ago when child support was involved, and the results were clear. 99.9% certainty that he was not the father. He held onto the paperwork, showing it to anyone who would listen, even offering it as evidence in court. But for Danielle, this was just another betrayal.
My mom has never, ever lied to me, even when things got bad, when they got worse. My mom has never lied to me.
But when I was away, your mother sick child support on me. They did the DNA test. I gave her the papers. They garnished my check.
Mr. Ellis, explain that. You had a DNA test already.
Yes.
The courtroom shifted as Danielle's mother, Rosa, took the stand. Yes, a test had been done, but she recalled different results. 99.9% that Louis was the father. The contradiction sent murmurs through the room. One test, two completely opposite results. Who was lying? Louis didn't budge. He insisted the paperwork had been clear and that child support had stopped because of it.
Was there a DNA test performed?
This on this DNA test got was from her through juvenile court, but they never showed the court.
So the bottom line is a DNA test was performed, yes or no?
Yes.
What were the results?
They say in the court 99% yes.
Louis, however, wasn't about to back down. He stuck to his story that the DNA test proved he wasn't the father. When pressed about the child support, he insisted that after the test was performed, he had been released from any further obligations. Money had been taken from his checks, but after a few months, it was returned. If the results said he wasn't the father, then why was he being dragged through this again?
I took those same papers to child support, and they said I have to pay child support.
They said you have to or you did not have to?
And they said they garnished my check 3 times. They said, we're gonna send that money back to you. Might take 3 to 4 weeks, take about a month, but I got it back, Your Honor.
So they garnished
Ask me a question.
Twice,
have you ever,
check 3 times?
What difference does it make? Have you ever received child support?
Because you told me twice.
Despite the overwhelming evidence, Danielle remained steadfast. She knew that the results of one test couldn't define her relationship with Louis. For years, she had lived with the idea that he was her father, even if he had never once embraced that truth. Deep in her heart, she knew that she was looking for acceptance and love, and she wasn't about to let the court proceedings stand in the way.
Did you make an attempt to get to know his family at all?
Yes, I talked to a couple of my family members on his side.
And what was their response? Did they open their arms to you?
Regardless of anything, I'm still their family. I look like them. I don't look like most of the people on my mom's side of the family, so I know there has to be some kind of connection.
Mary Ellis, Louis's mother, was called to testify. During her testimony, she described her son's character and upbringing, portraying him as a kind and responsible person. She also provided context about his relationship with Danielle and insisted that she wasn't her granddaughter. However, Danielle challenged her statements, bringing up past incidents that showed the older woman didn't like her.
Why are you convinced that your son isn't Miss Lide's biological father?
When I first saw the baby at a month old, she looked 4 months old. And from what I had heard from my son, her father's a great big man. What I heard from my neighbor, she has a little brother that she and the little brother were like twins, and the grandmother, Miss Lide Sr.'s.
Danielle recounts an incident from her childhood when she approached Mary to introduce herself, claiming to be Mr. Ellis's daughter, but Mary responded angrily. When Judge Lake asks Mary about this incident, Mary denies it, claiming Danielle is lying. She insists that Danielle is not her granddaughter and will not put the blame on her son. Danielle, in turn, insists that they are lying about her.
Seen her on a trolley when I was 10. I don't know if you remember.
You were 16.
I was 10. I saw her on a trolley where we used to live at, and I approached her, and I want to introduce myself like, you know, I'm Mr. Ellis's daughter. She told me, get on my face or I will smack you.
What?
Danielle's life had been filled with unanswered questions, but now the DNA results would settle the debate once and for all. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the judge as she opened the envelope. The long-awaited and desperately sought-after truth was about to be revealed. After years of confusion, frustration, and emotional pain, the truth was finally about to be revealed.
Mr. Ellis, you are the father.
Whoa!
I
knew it.
Yes. Boom! Ms. Beckley, you are in court today to prove Mr. Allen is the biological father of your 1-year-old daughter, Natalie Beckley.
Yes, Your Honor.
You say Mr. Allen has only seen his daughter one time since she has been born.
The explosive clash of two people, both convinced they were right, each one playing the game of denial and accusation. She had a child, a daughter named Natalie, and all she wanted was for the man she once trusted to step up and take responsibility, but he refused. The moment Mr. Allen walked into that courtroom, he was already on the defensive, claiming he was absolutely certain the child wasn't his. His mind was made up.
To take responsibility of something we both made. It makes me feel angry. I'm angry. She's without a father, you know, and it's terrible that she has to go through that, and I'm raising her on my own.
Ms. Beckley passionately described her frustration. She recounted the struggles of raising their daughter, Natalie, alone while Mr. Allen had barely been involved in her life. In fact, he'd only seen the baby once since her birth. That left Beckley feeling both enraged and heartbroken. He had been there for their 2 other children, but when it came to Natalie, he was nowhere to be found.
The nature of your relationship during the time when Natalie was conceived.
Well, me and Ms. Beckley had separated. We were co-parenting. We were still good friends.
That's not true. On Germany's 2nd birthday, he wasn't staying with me, but he ended up coming back on her birthday.
He fired back, claiming that he couldn't be the father because of doubts surrounding the timing of the pregnancy. According to him, the conception didn't align with their relationship timeline, and the whole situation felt wrong. They had been separated at the time, co-parenting amicably, or so he thought, when he ended up back at her house during their daughter's birthday. But it wasn't a tender reunion. It was, as he called it, angry sex. For him, angry sex doesn't make babies.
How long after that did you find out she was pregnant?
Within a day or 2.
A day or 2?
Yes, Your
That's
Honor.
a lie.
Yes, within a day
That
or
is
2,
a lie.
he told me.
How
Yes,
can I
Your
tell
Honor.
you a day after we have sex that I'm pregnant? That don't even make sense.
Got pregnant too fast? This guy has excuses. The confusion only deepened as the two continued to argue about when Beckley found out she was pregnant. The back and forth left the judge shaking her head. Beckley wasn't backing down. She brought in evidence, birth certificates for their other children, each with his name listed as the father. But for Natalie, nothing.
You didn't even give her his last name.
He don't deserve it.
Your
he
Honor,
don't deserve
I
it.
was there for my other 2 children by her. I even raised her other daughter, Your Honor. How could you tell me I don't deserve something when I stood my
You
ground
wasn't
for
there. How you
children?
deserve her? How she deserve your last name?
Did I not?
Antonio grew defensive. He had been there for the other kids, even for a child who wasn't biologically his. He had done his part, until this. He wasn't going to be trapped or take on a responsibility based on guilt alone. His own father had been taken from him when he was just a baby, murdered before he ever had a chance to know him. He understood the importance of a father's presence, which was exactly why he wouldn't commit to something that didn't feel right.
So how do you come and see the other kids, Mr. Allen, but not spend time with or bond with Natalie?
Well, Your Honor, I have questioned Shamiea about Natalie. You know, I asked could I speak to her. She say no.
The arguments escalated, each accusation adding more fuel to the fire. Sensing the animosity and dysfunction, Judge Lake pointed out how both parties had grown accustomed to their back-and-forth dance of denial and blame. But it didn't matter how many times they'd gone around in circles. The truth still remained. A little girl was caught in the middle.
You got 2 legs. You could have went down there and went to the court.
Hold on, let's get some order. Let's get some order. Let's get order, because I'm starting to understand what's going on here. This is a dance, y'all. You know this choreography.
Allen finally admitted how deeply he had been struggling with co-parenting with Beckley. He acknowledged their disconnect, but still refused to accept that Natalie was his child. The emotional weight of the moment settled into the room as both parties continued to clash, neither willing to compromise. So, the judge called in Allen's witness to testify.
Before she said anything, Your Honor, she has nothing to do with it. Whatever she says is false and is irrelevant. She don't know me, I don't know her.
Okay, let me be the judge of that since I'm the judge. State your name for the record.
Cheyenne Montgomery. I'm Darius' fiance, Your Honor. She has told Darius that he was not the father.
The tension reached a boiling point, but the situation wasn't as simple as Alan made it out to be. Still, despite the complicated circumstances, Itale was a result of their actions, and she was now a year old. Beckley wanted him to own up to it, but Alan wasn't having it. Instead, he confirmed his fiance's accusation. Beckley had been with other men around the same time.
You testified that you heard Miss Beckley had been sleeping with another man.
Yes, Your Honor.
Where did you hear this?
From a neighbor of hers.
A neighbor of hers told you this?
A neighbor of hers contacted him.
There's only one way to figure out the truth now. After all the fighting, denial, and back and forth, the DNA test results were ready. The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with tension. The final moment had come, and no one could guess what the outcome would be. Would Alan finally accept his role as a father, or would his doubts hold him back forever?
When it comes 1 year old, Italy, Beckley, it has been determined by this court. Mr. Allen, you are the father.
Told you. You too, fiance.
Mr. Mason, you previously appeared in court when you proved that the defendant's 1-year-old daughter was not your child. You are now here questioning the paternity of the defendant's 5-month-old son, Ace.
Clarence Mason had been here before, standing before the judge, denying paternity, swearing that a child wasn't his. And last time, he was right. The DNA test proved that the baby he had been accused of fathering was, in fact, not his. But now, months later, he was back. And despite a prenatal DNA test confirming that he was the father, Mason wasn't convinced. He refused to accept it, demanded another test, and brought his case back to court. Why? Because in his mind, something wasn't adding up.
That it's impossible to get a DNA for a child that's unborn just from a swab of the mother. I guess that's the only way I'm still acting the way I am toward him.
Well, you don't get the DNA of the child born just from a swab of the mother.
Mason wasn't just questioning the test, he was questioning everything. The timing, the circumstances, the way Ace cried whenever he held him, and most of all, the presence of another man, Courtney Haynes. Mason had noticed how quickly Haynes stepped into the picture and how Malone handed the baby to him instead of Mason. Yet, there he was, being called daddy by the baby's own mother.
And it's impossible to tell the DNA or the paternity of an unborn child.
Yes, sir.
What other reason do you have?
Every time I held Ace, it's like all he did was just cry, and there was just no connection.
That's what a baby does.
Then, there was the matter of the birth certificate. Clarence had been there when Ace was born. His name had been written on the document, sealing his role as the boy's father. But while he was away at work, LaQuisha had it changed. His name erased, replaced with Haynes's. It didn't add up. Why would she do that if she wasn't hiding something? LaQuisha insisted it wasn't about deception. It was about anger.
You didn't even know her when she was pregnant?
No.
Never known anything about each other.
So you don't believe that to be true, Mr. Mason?
No, ma'am. I feel like...
Why don't you believe it?
Malone had her own version of events. She admitted that putting Haynes' name on the birth certificate had been a mistake, but it wasn't what Mason thought. It wasn't because Haynes was the father. It was because Mason was acting like he didn't want to be. He had abandoned her emotionally, left her alone in the hospital after Ace was born, and refused to step up. And Haynes, he was there. He was the one holding her hand when Mason walked away.
And you have to fill your information out on that.
And so what is this you submitted to the court?
That's just the birth certificate that the hospital gave me that I could take home. And
that's
on the back
that
of that,
comes...
that's what he signed.
Mason refused to buy it. He had been there when Ace was born. He had signed the papers. But everything changed when he left the hospital to go to work. And besides, it wasn't just about paperwork. It was about instincts. Something inside him told him that Ace wasn't his. He didn't feel that unbreakable bond he had with his other kids. Whenever he looked into his son's eyes, he didn't see himself. He saw a stranger.
Me and Miss Malone, we was together for 5 years. And for 5 years, I feel like it was nothing but just dishonesty, and it was more bad than good.
And it was on both of our behalves.
And so that's why we came the last time.
LaQuisha Malone fired back. Mason hadn't just doubted paternity, he'd abandoned his role as a father. While Haynes stepped up, Mason pulled away, focusing only on their older children. She accused him of picking favorites, leaving Ace to bond with the man who actually acted like a dad. The courtroom buzzed as she revealed the final straw. Mason had allegedly cheated with a stripper.
And when we went our separate ways.
After we agreed that we was not gonna dwell on the past, he still did it anyway. So I took your advice and I left him. And now I'm starting
I didn't necessarily cheat.
The courtroom was thick with tension. The judge listened as both sides spilled their emotions, regrets, and accusations. Mason clung to his doubts, while Malone clung to her certainty. And then there was Haynes, standing on the sidelines, watching his name dragged into the mess. He claimed he hadn't even met Malone until after Ace was born, but Mason didn't believe that either.
Then you here saying you don't trust the results when you're the one that's not being trustworthy.
I wasn't cheating, Your Honor, at all. I went to a friend who I could talk to about my situation because I could never go to Miss Malone and talk.
What was your situation?
However, as much as Mason wanted to believe there was a conspiracy against him, the evidence wasn't in his favor. The court had already conducted a prenatal DNA test, and the results were clear. Yet, here he was, begging for another test, convinced that science had gotten it wrong. He needed proof, real proof, the kind that left no room for doubt.
Mr. Mason, as a judge, as a woman, I've practiced law for over 2 decades. I have every reason to throw this case out because you have not presented any evidence here today that would suggest something was wrong with that.
And then, the moment of truth arrived. The tension in the room was suffocating. Mason had spent months clinging to the possibility that he wasn't the father. He had convinced himself that he had been tricked, lied to, betrayed. But the truth didn't care about his feelings. It didn't care about his doubts, his fears, or his what-ifs.
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Mason, you are the father. Again.
So